Hi, friends. So welcome back to Futbol Brew. It's our first episode after a year, and it's a special one as we're joined by someone whose name is synonymous, well, to me. Heart, grit, and some of the most unforgettable moments in Philippine football. So my interview with her 2 years ago is one of my favorite episodes ever. It was very heartwarming, and also because she's been um very generous and open. So Tahnai Annis, a leader both on and off the pitch, is joining us to share her insight stories, reflections of her incredible journey thus far. Grateful for this opportunity to virtually sit down with
hmm
someone who has given so much, and I'm uh thrilled to dive deep with Dee and talk about her experience and much more. So, Dee, let's get started. How are you? How have you been?
yeah, I'm doing well. It's great to be back here with you. Uh, your podcast when I was on Football Brew was, my favorite pod that I was on, and I felt the same way. Like it was a great conversation, and yeah, I'm just glad that I could get back here with you and be able to share a little bit more about myself to our Philippine football community. So I'm excited.
So is there anything particular that you wanna share
Yes.
or
Yeah.
talk
No.
about?
So um, I guess the reason behind wanting to get on here again with you, because I'm not very good at taking videos of myself or manufacturing something like that. So I thought this um, podcast, this conversation with you would be a good way to dive into and unpack my announcement of retiring from international and professional football. And so, um, yeah, it's a big announcement for me. It's something that over the past months I knew was going to need to be a conversation. Um, but I'm happy to be on this side of it and kind of coming to that on my own terms and getting to share a little bit about what that looks like and how that's been um, for me and to coming to make this decision.
Well, first off, thank you for trusting me and my small, humble
hmm
podcast to make that
Yeah,
important announcement. You've already given so much to the game, and to everyone who has had the privilege to watch you play or play with you. So I guess we have a lot to unpack here. So okay, can
yeah.
you can you share with us what led to that decision to retire?
Um, well, I don't think it's any secret how old I am. Um, and it's not just because I'm a much older footballer. Um, I think my body, my mind, and kind of my spirit is just come to a point where it's all in alignment that it's time for me to step away. Um, Obviously, if I felt that I could continue at, the level that's necessary to compete in an international and even professional level at this point, um, I definitely would want to continue on because, especially, over the last few years, how much our national team has accomplished and continues to progress, and especially just the layout of women's football all over the world is finally getting its time, I feel like, and it's finally starting to break out and um, just really elevate. And to know that that's happening right now is like that's the part where it's just like I've been like playing like back and forth, push and pull, like, yeah, you can do it. You can, pull out another season. Like there's so many exciting opportunities happening right now. And I think what also kind of started to have that writing on the wall for me was at the beginning of this year. Like I definitely, told myself and those around me that like I would take this year as it came. Like month by month, window by window, like if I was still feeling good, if I was still, fully in it and progressing the way that I hoped that, we would keep going and it would just like go from there. And I was feeling pretty good at the beginning of the year. And then I think once the international windows started popping up and was traveling more, I started to really feel it in my body. And then when I was being approached or getting asked about certain opportunities that, I would have been over the moon about, I had to kind of really have those harder conversations with myself and be real with myself. Like, absolutely, they were exciting and I wanted to be a part of it, but there was still so much pause when I was having these conversations with like potential teams or, agents and things like that of people approaching me and being like, "Hey, I have an opportunity for you. Like, let me know if you're interested or, we want you to come over here." And while like that feeling never goes away of like that opportunity opening up or feeling like you are wanted at a place, like that feeling doesn't go away and it's the same every time. But I felt like as much as I wanted to walk toward it, I couldn't really do it in good. Like it still felt like I couldn't be all in with it. And that was mainly the physical part, but I think also a little bit of the mental of just being drained. Um, because I've been playing since I was 8 years old and I'm 35. So like it's just been a really long journey and with so many things happening over the last like few years leading up to the World Cup and all that preparation and things like that took a really big physical, mental, emotional toll on me, and in positive ways, absolutely, but also in some pretty difficult ways. And um, after the World Cup, I really started to feel that heaviness of everything because it was the first time I felt like I could breathe in 3 years, pretty much. Um, and so I was feeling that those effects after that. And um, I think once I was having those conversations with myself of what that would really look like if I took these opportunities or continued to play, what that would mean for me physically. And I, these past years, whenever we've had off seasons or, breaks in between camps, like I've been training on my own, like by myself for years. There's been a few special times where I've gotten to train with friends or train with teammates or have a team um, to go back to. But for a lot of it, it's been on my own. And I didn't know if like, it takes a lot of discipline to train on your own and at a high level and keep things, you know, when you're living around everyone else that is in a different situation than you, it just becomes a lot harder. And And truly, it was in the end, it was my body that uh, kind of decided for me back in, I think, July when I was trying to train and run. And, um, I've been very grateful and fortunate to not have sustained really intense injuries over my career. Like, I know that one of the reasons why I've had such a long career is because my knees have stayed intact. And so I'm really grateful for that. Um, but over the probably since hitting 30, the thing that comes up the most is just wear and tear everywhere. And so I've just had so much tendonitis in different parts of my body that I didn't know you could have tendonitis. And so starting to feel those things pop up in just like all different places. I've, gotten through it with my physios and things like that and been able to manage things like that. But this summer it started popping up in my hamstrings. Um, and it was really painful and really difficult to manage. Um, Trying to, because we're running every day, and I gotta use my hamstrings, and it just got to the point where even just jogging, my hamstrings would, after a few minutes, would just contract so much that I would lose like my complete range of motion. And I think that's what like really settled it for me, was just how much pain I was in just going on a jog, and then thinking about how I would have to manage that and the extra work that I would need to do to continue to, you know, get that stronger, but while still maintaining a conditioning regimen. Like, it just like all of it piled up, and I was just like, you gotta let it go. You gotta let it go. So yeah, once it came to that point, I was just like, yeah, it's time, and it's okay. Even if it doesn't feel good, I knew it was never going to.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed to know. Is like, it was never gonna feel good
Mm.
to finally know that you need to step away from something that you love and have been doing for more than three-quarters of your life. So yeah, that did it for me. But
Yeah. No, I was gonna say 'cause you've been mentioning like how you most of the time you're doing it alone. Was there like
mhm.
anyone anyone in particular that kind of help you reach this decision and accept it?
um, I mean, I've got a good support system around me. Um, you know, my partner is also like in the um she's a professional dancer, and so like she knows what this life is like and has had to do gone through a lot of the same things. Whether, it's dance or it's football, like, or our industries, like it's very similar, the path and the hardship through it. And so it's been good to have her understanding of what I'm going through, and just being there as support. I knew that I would only ever accept the decision if I came to it on my own. Um, and so I think being able to have that space over the last few months, to make that decision and come to that decision on my own and not feel like I'm being pushed one way or another. Um, and my family would also like to know that, I could continue on, and that, you've got more in you, but um, they also know that I was going to make the decision on my own, and it was going to be, um, it wasn't going to be taken lightly. So, uh, yeah, definitely got to it on my own, but I have a good support system around me that has allowed me and given me the space and support to do that and come to that decision on my own.
Right. Okay,
Say
so
that.
I guess let's start looking back to the many years. So what
Yeah.
were some of the most unforgettable moments from your career, T?
As I think about it and kind of reflect on it, and I've been doing that over the last few months since I've known that, I wasn't going to continue on. And I definitely do have like some moments, and what's been really cool to kind of think about is just like I have been a part of so many teams, and I've been a part of so many like successful like winning teams, which I think is like a really special part of uh my career, is that like it's been full of like kind of two steps forward, one step back, three steps forward. Like, it's like definitely been like a roller coaster um, for me over the years. But I think just like some of those unforgettable memories I have is just like I've been part of like champion teams all along the way, which I know that a lot of people don't get like to experience all of that. And I think it's so cool because like in college, I went to the University of Florida, and while I was there, my team during those 4 years, like we were SEC champions 3 times. Um, and so I got to experience like the winning culture of that. We got to play in the NCAA tournament every single year I was there, which is a really cool experience. Yeah, we weren't NCAA champs during that time. But like 3 out of my 4 years there, we won our conference, um, which is really special. And then when I went to play in Iceland, um, the club that I was with last year as well, was the first club I went and played for out of college. And my first season there, we won the Icelandic Cup. Um, and it was the first time that club had ever done that before. And so like my first professional experience, like we won the entire league that first year, and we weren't the best team. We definitely weren't the best team, but there was like a belief in that team. And I think, when that sometimes it happens where the ball falls your way a little bit more often. And it was like one of those seasons. And it was again another time where I felt like I got to be on just like it was we ended up winning, but we weren't the best team in college. When I felt like we were winning, I was like, yeah, we won because we were the best team like in our conference. And it felt that. And you were like, yeah, like we did A, B, and C to get here. And then like so then to me, like for that frame of time, it was like, oh, this is what makes a winning team. This is what you have to have, and this is how you win championships and things like that. And then when we got to Iceland, and we definitely weren't the best team. Like we weren't the most talented team. We weren't the, biggest club in Iceland. We were one of the smaller clubs in the top league there. And we didn't have all of these resources and things like that. But like it was just like kind of one of those Cinderella seasons where you're like the ball rolls your way, and oh, we had a lot of games where we would win 1-0, and the other team would have like 20 shots, and we would have four, and one of ours would go in, and it just like you kind of like saw that unfold, and I was like, wow, like this also makes like a successful winning team. And like the belief built throughout that season, and we just like it was such just like a good unit. And so then winning that was like, another way to be like, oh, this can also happen. And you can create a winning environment, a winning team. And you don't have to have the best players. You don't have to have the most of this to win a championship. And so it was just like I got to be part of that also. And then and then with the Philippines with our national team to see like the progress of everything there. Like we were like at a certain place with a certain, things like against us and some things working for us. And, my most unforgettable, I feel like moment or just like event was the AFF in the Philippines. Like as much as the World Cup was like a surreal moment, a surreal thing to be a part of, and it was like so inspirational and um you can't really mimic it. You can't really articulate very well like what that kind of atmosphere is like. And so like obviously the World Cup is like up there, but like team moment, team event was AFF, like for me. Um, that was another time, another team that I got to be a part of where I felt that tournament was like the essence of our team. I felt like the way that we played, you know, the way that that tournament was set up, it was set up against all teams. It was not an okay format for a tournament. And after that tournament, like a 14-day tournament with 7 matches in it is basically banned after that. But to like know that that's what we went up against was the format of a tournament and, like some of the top teams in Asia and to come out that way. Um, it was one of those times where they talk about this thing in sports where you hit a flow state. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not so it's like it's a hard place to get to, but when you're in it, you know that you're there. And that tournament was one of those where I felt like myself included and just like everyone on our team was on the same page and we were like in that state together because it was just like it felt like all of the hard work, everything that we had like been preparing for, it all kind of like came together in that tournament. And it also like partly came together and felt that flow state because we were in the Philippines, because we were finally, after so long, getting to play in the Philippines. And, um, and it just like, it kind of just like built from game one all the way to the last game. You just like saw it get bigger. You felt the feeling just like culminate into this just like big like explosion basically by the final. And to have the support that we had around us and just like knowing that it was also a tournament where, because this also doesn't happen a lot in international football in big tournaments where you're using everyone. Usually in those, because the way that it was like in the World Cup or like other, big international tournaments, you're using like 15 to 16 players, and maybe dipping into a little bit of your like 17, 18. But it's
Right.
like you usually have your core group and you're like, this is probably who's going to be playing with like a few adjustments.
Right.
But the way that that tournament was set up, it just wasn't possible. And like we could have done it, but we would have been killing our players. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the fact that like at some point in time during that tournament, we used every single player every single player. And I thought that that was really special because that's not how that usually happens. And so that made it more like even, just like unified because you knew everyone was locked in at all
Right.
times. You didn't have people that would kind of, be like, oh, well, I'm not going to get used anyway. So, like, I can't really be as present here. I don't feel as all in because, like, I don't really feel part of it. Like, I'm obviously here, I'm putting in the work, like, doing all these things, but, like, I'm probably not going to get any minutes. Everyone got minutes and, like, decent minutes and played in, like, several games. And so, that gave everyone even more like purpose behind it. And you could tell and you knew that everyone stepped up when they needed to. And it was just like, there wasn't a lot of coaching that needed to happen. There wasn't a lot of like everyone finally kind of just like knew what they needed to do and they just did it. And it paid off in the best way. And that doesn't happen a lot since I've been on, since I've been in the game and been on so many teams. Like that was like the event, the tournament where all of the things that you love about the game got to like be sprinkled in there at some point in time. And so that's just like what made it so sweet for me. And I think that was just definitely my most like unforgettable. And it was the first time also like my my sister and my mom had come over during that tournament too. Like, for a lot of my career, which sucks and it's sad, but like that was the nature of it, is that I was playing outside of the United States or I was playing internationally and I didn't get to play in front of my family very often. So the very few times that that was able to happen was really meaningful to me because most of the time family and friends were just watching like either like a streaming link, or for a good amount of, 10 years ago, there weren't streaming links. So people weren't watching you at all. So you were just, yeah, a lot of it was isolating and kind of something I did on my own. And so the times that when I got to share it with the people that have been around my whole journey and have, supported me through that, like those moments of getting to share that with them were definitely like my favorite. So it's just like that whole on off field, like you just had everything that you needed. And that, yeah, those are some of my,
Can I just share T? So one of my
yeah.
um favorite moments. I think if Pam would be watching this, because
Mm,
it was Pam who initiated this conversation after the game. This was the game versus Vietnam. So you took the penalty.
okay.
Yeah, you took the PK.
Hmm.
Um, and then after the game, Pam was like, I have a photo of T. You did some, I don't know, you motion sort of that you will take the penalty.
Hmm.
You've kind of owned it. So she has actually a
Hmm.
picture of you where you did this is mine or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, and then of course you converted that penalty, and then a few minutes after you took the corner kick for the last goal
Hmm.
by Serena. And I think aside from that moment when Pam was talking to us about that, it was one of my favorite moments because I think so now it kind of makes sense after hearing, your insights about it, because the way
Hmm.
you celebrated it. Like I haven't seen you celebrate a goal so happily until that moment. I mean, you looked happy after the
Right, sure.
in Indonesia goal in the Asian Cup, but
Yeah.
that one versus Vietnam was like, I have like several photos of you, and some of those I think I
Hmm.
used it as one of the covers previously because you just look so happy, and I haven't seen you that happy before when you score a
Yeah,
goal.
yeah. Like expressive, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it
for
kind of makes
sure.
sense. So what
Yeah.
was that the
Yeah, I
case?
remember that.
Were you taking ownership
Yeah.
of the
Yeah. Yeah. That was like, and I honestly don't even remember like how that went down, but I
Mhm.
do remember just like it was like one of the first times or probably only times where I wasn't like, oh, let's see who else wants to step up. Like, take your moment. And I think
Yeah.
I just like, it was one of those moments you black out and you're like, it happened. And I was like, that was a handball. I was like, I'm taking it. Like, it's mine. Like, let's go. Like, I was like so amped up. It
Right,
was so
right.
amped up. And I just, like I said, all of these things were like, that's that flow state
Yeah, yeah.
where like I'm not functioning on like, oh, like let's like think about this. Let's like your body's just like in it. And I was just like, yeah, we're doing this. I've got it. It's not a problem. Like, I felt that same way taking the penalty um kick to qualify for the World Cup. That was another like moment. I remember that, shootout once it got to that point. And I can't remember who I looked at or that I had a conversation with, but like right before we got into the huddle to like do the shootout, I was just like, we've got this. It was like another moment where I was like, I already knew. I was like, oh, this is no problem. Like no one wants to be in a penalty
The
shootout to
second
qualify
penalty
for
taker
something. Like I think it's
for
the
the
worst way
Philippines.
to do it. But
Annis,
at
two
that point in
steps
time, I
and
was like, oh,
fires it
don't
into the
worry.
net.
Like we've got this.
Four
Like I
really good
already feel
penalties
it.
so
Like
far.
this is,
2-2 in the
this is going to
shootout.
be our time. This is going to happen for us. And it didn't even matter that we had like missed a couple. I was just like, don't worry about it. Like it's not a problem. Like I still know that we have this and this is going to be ours. And that's how I felt when I took that penalty also. I was just like, oh yeah, like I got this, no problem. And I know those are very like nerve-wracking situations and
Oh yeah.
I probably should have felt a bit more pressure, but like, yeah, there are just, I'm not always very sure of myself. Um, but those moments I definitely like those were the times when I was just like, nope, no problem. I got it. And yeah, I just hope that, that kind of feeling is something that's like contagious. And, you know, it took a while for me to get to that point, I think, to feel that kind of confidence, to feel that kind of just like sureness of myself that like you're fine, you can do this, and you've been doing it forever. So like at some point in time, you're gonna need to believe in your abilities and believe that you've put in enough work and done it enough times and that people can count on you and you can be relied on. And yeah, yeah. Thanks for bringing up those moments too. I almost forgot. But like those penalty kick moments were big time because
Yeah.
it is just like it's you and you're on the spot. And I think I'm just really happy to know that I got to that point in my career where I was like, I got this and we don't need to worry.
Yeah, because usually, I mean, we all know you're the captain, right? But like usually you're like the quiet type. You
Yeah.
don't celebrate
Yeah.
as
Usually I'm
much.
like, you go out and do it. And I'm, ruminating in here. I'm so happy and I'm so proud of you kind of thing.
So that's why I
But
guess it was
you don't
a
see it.
right.
Hmm.
It was a big deal
Yeah.
because Pam was telling me, I have a photo. I have a photo. Is excited to show me
Yeah.
that photo with you motioning like this is and Pam was so animated in telling us that
Yeah.
story and how you were like,
Oh,
I'll take it. I'll take it. Because
yeah.
I think Serena wanted to take that penalty. I'm not sure. But you took the
Maybe. I don't
ball.
know. I don't remember hearing her.
You took the ball and you took ownership of that PK. But anyway,
Oh,
so so like I said, you we all know you're the captain of the national team, and we all we've already shared some of the things you've been through as a football player, but like what's something about your journey in your career that you wish more people knew?
Would have wanted people to know, I think, more like along the way. And as it's, as time has gone on, is just, and it was probably a little bit of my responsibility that I didn't share enough um, about like what my journey has been like. Um, but I think it kind of just like gets lost in the kind of shininess of it, or the like interesting of it when you're talking to people and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And you're like, "I'm a professional footballer." And as like fun and cool as that sounds to like a lot of people, and it is, like I do feel that way about it, especially like it's just like it also means so many different things. Like there's so much more like under that that you need context, and I don't think I ever shared enough context with people. And honestly, even like people that I was close to, even like good friends or family at times. Um, it would just be left at like, "Oh, where are you going next? What cool, fun thing are you doing?" Like which like those are the things that like obviously are fun to share, and you enjoy sharing them. And um, I've been very fortunate to be able to do that for so long, but like it's not, I think like an immediate picture kind of like gets put into people's heads when you're like, "Oh, well, like, yeah, I'm a professional athlete." And they're like, "Oh, well, like, what a life." It automatically gets like, I think, put into the heads of like what you see on TV, which is like your NBA players, your NFL football, like everyone thinks that like or maybe they don't, but like from what I feel, is that like I'm, living like Megan Rapinoe's life, and I'm not. Like there are like different tiers, there's different, like it is a spectrum of
Yeah.
what it like looks like to be a professional footballer. Like that is like at the other end of the spectrum, and like obviously like that's what you aim for and that's what you would want. And that was just not my journey, and I'm thankful for the way that mine has played out. And it's been very long, and I think the longevity of that is like something to like be proud of, is that like I stayed with it, and it wasn't easy. Like there was a time right after I came back from Iceland after playing there for 3 seasons, and it was right when the NWSL was like still very, very green, very new. It had only been around for maybe a couple of seasons. And I was like, okay, like I want to go home. They finally have like another women's team, women's, professional league here. Um, because right out of college, I was drafted into the professional league here at what it was. And 2 weeks later, it folded. So that was like a big high, big low. What? It just happened. And so then knowing that after those 3 years, they had finally like cultivated another one. And I was like, okay, I want to try and be part of it. And it was still at a point where there was no money in it. So like I went into preseason with the Washington Spirit, and
Oh, I
the
didn't know
most they could
this.
offer me, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I was in preseason with the Washington Spirit, and then by the end of preseason, the only thing that they had available to offer was a contract for nothing. They were like, I want you here. I want you to, be with the team, but we don't have any money for you. And you would have to commute. Like my parents were living in Virginia at the time, so it was like maybe like an hour commute or something like that. they were like, you have to commute and you wouldn't be able to pay you anything, but we want you.
Mm.
And I was like even that was difficult to say no to. Just to play for nothing was difficult to say no to because it was like such a great opportunity. It was such a good environment that I was in, and like that was what I had been working for. And but I was already 25 and fully financially independent. So like I couldn't play for nothing realistically, and I would have had to have another job and like been like that commute and everything like that. And I think that that experience really took the wind out of my sails. Because I was just like, what do we, I just had like 3 really great seasons in Iceland, won a cup. We went to Champions League the next year. Like I was buzzing. I was like, yeah, like, and now we have like another professional league and, I can get into that. And then like to know that like that was all, like that was the ceiling, it felt like at that time was to be in a good environment, good training environment, like all these things, new league, everything like that, but you would still make nothing. And after that, I I kind of let that steer what happened next for a while. I was like, I'm very much into like taking the things around me and being like, maybe this is a sign, maybe I'm being like, kind of shown the door. And I was like, maybe it's time for me to hang it up and, like go get a job and like do the thing, like I had my fun, I got to do my thing. And, it was kind of still around that point in time where a lot of people would retire after just like playing a couple years. And so I was like, maybe that's what's happening right now. And so I did step away from the game for 2 years. I was coaching. I was like, maybe I take a stint at coaching, see what that's like, go back to school, get my master's. Like, I was like, oh, like this is what I'm supposed to do, right? And that was like during that time was also really important for me because I realized during that time, I was like, you're not done. I was like, I'm coaching these girls and I like 100% want to be out there and playing. And, I was like involved in all of our training sessions and I was just like, you're not done. You're not done. Like, that's silly. Like, I didn't want like that decision to be made for me. And I was like, you get to decide whether or not you're done and you can figure something out. Like, something will happen, You can get back into the game, like, just like be patient or whatever. So while I was coaching, I was also working for my buddy that I met in Iceland that was playing over there, and he had a uh, combine company that he ran for uh, men in the US to get like scouted and like to get opportunities. And so I was working with him. I was working for him. And so every so often we would go to a place in the States and have a combine and he would bring in professional coaches to come look at the guys. And I think this one was in Connecticut. And that was when I met Bruno Baltazar, who was the men's assistant national team coach when Thomas Dooley was coach. And I was talking with him and he was like, hey, like, he's like, are you Filipino by chance? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. What's your connection, white guy? Like, how do you know that? And he was like, I'm actually the assistant coach for the men's national team in the Philippines. And I was like, oh, that's cool. He was like, did you know they have a women's team? And I was like, no. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, would you be interested in, you know, uh, like trying out or getting connected to that? And I was like, yeah, like said like, how do I get into that? And that's when he um, put me in touch with Heather Cook. And Heather Cook was heavily involved with the national team at that time. And so I got in contact with her, and that's how I got like ended up at my first, ID camp in Corona back in 2015. And so there was my sign. That was my way back into the game in 2015, even though I didn't actually get with the team until 2017, but I kept with it. But it was like that was also like another time where it like got, kind of re-sparked it. And I was like, yeah, like this is another avenue. This is how I can get back into the game. And I got so excited about it. And then just like again, so deflated once like the passport thing just like kind of like fizzled out. And I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get it. And so it was like, so then in my head, I was like, maybe this is another sign. Someone's shutting the door and they're like, hey, like, let it go. Just let it go. And so I was like, for a little bit, I was like, okay, like, fine. And was, like dragging my feet and, throwing a tantrum about it. But I was like, all right. And I think I waited, I don't know how long, maybe another like 6 months or something. And then another ID camp popped up and I was like, don't do it. I was like, it's a trap. You're just gonna get like, you're gonna go there and you're gonna hit the wall again. You're gonna get the stop signs. And I was like, that was when I made the agreement with myself. I was like, we're gonna try one more time. And if it like comes up as a dead end, it's time. Then like that's that, like, okay. Because there still like weren't many opportunities around and things like that. And at the time I was hitting 27 and I still felt like my body was fine or whatever. But I was just like, you're getting up there and you're kind of like sitting in this limbo of like, what do you do? Do you move on?
Yeah.
Do you keep it? So I was like, all right, one more time. And that third time's a charm. It stuck. It stuck and I, got to fortunately extend my career another 6 years, 7 years. And just like it felt like once I finally got to play with the Philippines, like everything's just kind of been a whirlwind since then. And I've just been like making those ends meet. But like those are the things that have like that when I say I'm a professional footballer, like you don't talk about, like I wasn't sharing those things that like I was not playing and there's never been a time where I've been a full-time professional footballer. That's what I've done full time and that's the only thing that I've been doing. And I think that's like the part that gets like lost in translation is that yeah, I do get to play the sport I love for a living and I've made it work. But it's not like I've been waking up and I just like
Megan Rapinoe.
live this, yeah, this like whimsical, like life of like those things. Like I've always had another job in between off season, things like that. Like I work like 3 or 4 different like side gigs just to be able to do that so that I can play. And it's not, it's always been that. And it's just been because like I've had the passion to play and it is because it's what I love. So I've like sacrificed a lot of other things too in order to do that. Um, and so, yeah, there's just like, it's been a roller coaster and I've never really like, get into that with people. Like I said, it stays at the like, oh, where are you traveling next? Like, where do you get to go? Like, what event are you doing? What team are you with? Like, that's so cool. Like, all of these things. And I do agree. Like I said, I totally agree. It is like super cool, but like you are also sacrificing a lot of different things, and you are also having to do so much in order to be able to
Mm.
play and continue to do that. And I'm so happy and that that is becoming like maybe a little bit less, so that there are many more opportunities now and things in place
Mm.
for women footballers to be full-time footballers, like it is with any other men's, you know,
Yeah.
side at like the higher levels and things like that. Like it's finally getting there. And so it just like, it's really great to know that that can maybe be the focus, and that's your full-time job, and that's what you're getting paid for, and people are taking care of you and they're giving you the things that you need in order to continue to do that full time, so that you don't have to be spending your time working and doing other things, so that you can find time in the day to train. And then, like there's things being put into place and built for women's professional footballers, so that like, yeah, that's the focus. And that's what's cool. I'm happy that I've being able to stay in the game long enough to see those changes and those transitions happening. And I think that's the only part that's like hard for me to like accept and grapple with, is that like, oh, I can't continue to like go into that and like
Yeah.
lean into that, because I just simply can't. But that's okay. I'm glad it's there now, and that it has changed the way that it has. And I'm happy to be able to say that like I was able to experience like all of that. Like obviously in hindsight, I wouldn't change the things in the way that everything happened, because that's how it was supposed to happen. Um, but I'm just like, yeah, just excited to know that it doesn't have to continue that way for our younger generations and things like that.
So what's next now for you, T?
Um, I'm taking, opinions and offers on what should be next. Um, yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Mm.
That's still up in the air. Um, I've been taking the time these past few months to kind of just process all of it, grieve when needed to,
Mm.
and I think just like take a breath,
Right.
um, because it is a lot. And I think my body, my brain, my heart does like want that time of just like relief, and to be able to transition. Um, I didn't want to feel like I needed to jump right into something, because I know that I wouldn't be 100% there for it. Um, and I would kind of be burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to start something new, knowing that that is what my input would be able to be. Um, but I do plan to stay involved with the national team. Not 100% sure what that looks like. Like, I was working with the under 17s when they were in Bali. And I really enjoyed that. It was a really good experience. They're a really great group of girls, and they're gonna make waves. And um, so I hope to continue to be involved with our youth in some way, whatever that may look like. Um, but I will stay involved, and I will keep pushing for more for our senior team. Um, but I don't see like full-time coaching in at least my short term right now. I know that it's something I might pick up and that I can do, but I don't feel a pull in that way. So yeah, I mean, I hope to be able to work with youth in some way, whether that be like within like the LGBTQ community or youth footballers or something. I do want to get into like the mental health space of it all, whether that's in sport or with like trauma-based stuff like that. But I don't know what that path will look like.
Yeah.
Right now. I really don't want to go back to school. I've been out of academia for 8 years. So the thought of that is a little unnerving and unsettling and doesn't sound like fun, but might have to be something that I do. We'll see.
Do you have
keeping doors open.
do you have any like non-football interests that I don't know, you'd want to explore?
You'd hope so. That's like the goal, right? Is to know that you have other passions and like things you're really interested in outside of football. And it's a lot of it's been centered around football, so I might have to try some new things, which is a little scary. But yeah, I'm a super curious
What
person,
about
so
dancing?
oh no. No, that's not one of them. That's not one of them. I save that for the actual dancers. I don't want to infringe on that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think for now, I'm okay doing like things that don't require a lot of investment and like a lot of myself in it. I think I'm cool just laying low. I am doing some like personal private football trainings right now, like one-on-one or small group, and I've always really enjoyed that. So that's like my connection, like staying with it right now, having some like football in my life, but like doing it in a way that I've always really enjoyed. Just that one-on-one and just like developing skills and like the fundamental stuff like that. Like I really enjoy that. So I've been doing that a little bit here and there, which is nice. But yeah, blank canvas. We'll see. It's weird. It's a weird place to be in, thinking about not. Yeah, I know it's already been like a big transition of just like not playing the last, few months. Um, it's yeah, it's sad, but it's weird. It's weird to think that I've not really been in this situation before. Um, and just that I feel like you almost like have like done it backwards. Like usually you start your career around, maybe your 20s, things like that, and 20, 30 years later. And I've been doing this since I was a little kid. And now it's like, now what?
Yeah.
How do I start now? I don't have experience in things. And now's all the time to be like, you're 35 years old. Why don't you have the experience in these things? And that's another thing that I'm glad that they're trying to integrate into is that, with professional footballers, they're giving them outside opportunities to build things for when they are finished.
Yeah.
because those, I didn't learn anything about that. Those haven't been in place, and that's kind of where I find myself now,
Mm.
you know? And so, uh, yeah, I could also see myself in a spot of I know some of these like positions have been popping up a little bit more now, and I don't know if you've heard of them, but like kind of like player welfare
Mm.
um positions that have within like probably more of your larger,
Yeah.
bigger organizations
Hmm.
or clubs where
Yep.
they have someone that is taking care of like player welfare, like kind of like off the field,
Mm.
like are we taking care of their minds, their extracurriculars, things like that?
Right.
Are we developing them in those professional settings as well? I could be into that. I think that seems uh, it's something that I wish I would have had
Mm.
more. You know, just kind of like a player advocacy
Yep.
outside of just like the legal stuff and like
Yep.
protections and things like that. So we'll see. I have some ideas, but I gotta walk towards some of them. And right now I'm just hanging out.
Well, you take your time. You've given so much to the sport and Philippine
Yeah,
football.
yeah. I'm
But
trying to be patient.
yeah, and not just through, your achievements, but also like through the inspiration and the example that you've set. And as we talked about your journey thus far, I'd love to like maybe hear more about um the lasting impact you hope to leave. Like, how do you
Okay.
want to be maybe remembered
Uh-huh.
by your teammates, the fans, or maybe, future players like the U17s whose lives I'm sure you've touched both on and off the field.
I think in those terms, um, of how I hope that I've like, made an impact, whether that be on kind of like a micro or macro level. Um, I think it's just, I hope that I've been a good example, um, of either like what leadership looks like, or just, I think for me, that something that I've kept with me since I was in college that has always stuck with me and that I continue to tell people that I'm around and within teams and things like that is I just hope that I've been a good teammate. I think that's one of the most important things, and it takes the honestly it takes a little bit of pressure off of yourself to either feel like you need to succeed or like do it just takes that internal pressure off of yourself like to do well all the time. If what my main focus isn't like, okay, you need to do well, you need to like harbor all of this pressure on yourself to succeed and be resilient and all of these things and push through even when it's difficult. And I've just always told people like make sure you're a good teammate, and I think that you will find yourself doing well within whatever team you're a part of, and so, and what does be a good teammate look like? Are you supportive? Are you compassionate to your teammates? Are you reliable? Um, and are you there to help, you know, push people to lift them up? Um, because the best part of the teams that I've been on, it's less about the X's and O's and the competitiveness competitiveness of it, but it's like through the unity of the group and of the unit. And like I said, I've never been a part of a team where like really like you just like have all of the best talents and you know throw them on there and you're like, yeah, we are the most talented people, so you're supposed to win, like go do it. It's always been like through the work of like the unit doing so well. And that's what I've always believed in, is that like it's about it's about the collective. It's about that group. And if you get a group of players that all believe that and work from that place, that it's not about me, it's not about how well I do, it's not about me being the best on the pitch, but it's about how well I can get this group of players around me to work for one another. And I think that is those are the things that kind of like transcends the pitch. Um, and that's the like character building, that's the personal development. Those are those like intangible things that if you can like embody those different things, like you're helping people on the pitch, but you're also helping develop those things off the pitch. And it's more about people, about the people. It's less about the sport. The sport's just kind of like the vehicle that you're using um, to help develop these skills and these strengths and these things that will go on to help you in other aspects of your life, help you in your relationships, help you in whatever like professional things that you do outside of football. Like those are the important things. And I think I just hope that I embody those things and also have been those things for other people so that they feel supported enough to kind of either, you know, take on different challenges or not be afraid to do things that might seem difficult or might seem like something that is outside of their reach, um, and kind of just like keep the humanity within it all. Um, and I know that it's being looked at more now, and as the mental part of it is being taken more seriously. But like, you know, we've all had coaches or teams that you've been up on where like the easiest way to get people to do what you want them to do is to make them fear you, to make them scared of making mistakes, to pit people against each other. Like obviously, like you're gonna compete against your teammates and things like that, but it's the way that you look at competition. Is it you're competing so that you're making the players around you better while you're also getting better, or is it to just break people down and like get them to quit or get them to like, you know, like actually like, you know, dislike one another or like to create division within a team instead of like using competition to raise the level of the group together, to want to compete to a common goal and not want to compete to destroy one another or to remove the humanity out of the people that you're working with or that you are a part of the team with. And so I just like hope that like I've lived that out, and that has been like my message, is that it's so much bigger than the sport and the things that we're doing, and that the sport is just the vehicle for better conditions, better environment, better, you know, just change for the better through treating people with respect and treating people the way that you would want yourself to be treated. And like it feels like simple things that you're talking about, but I feel like sometimes it seems harder and harder to make those connections, to live those things out, because of either the culture that you're in or what outside external messaging is telling you, things like that. So I feel like that's just what I've hoped to kind of put out there. Like, what you put out there is what, you hope to get back, and you don't do it so that you hope to get that back or that's what you expect back. It's just that like that's what you feel is helpful. That's how you feel like growth can happen and that like change can happen. Um, or the people coming in next behind you and things like that. So it's just like more of like on the human level, on the intangible things. I hope that I've helped to bring light and awareness to, that there are bigger things outside of football, and that it's about, for me, it's always been about the people that I'm around. And I know that that is what has kept me in the game so long, is because football has always been the place where I've felt like I belong. And it's not about like fitting in, like that's so different to me. It's just like there's always been a belonging within the game. And so I want everyone to be able to feel that, because that's what has kept me going through it and has been the most fulfilling part of it, is all the different relationships I've had, all the different friendships, all the different connections and things that it has allowed me to experience, different cultures, different people, different ways of life, different ways of playing the game, like all of these different things. And it is just like, it opens you up. It opens you up to so many different possibilities, and it just makes your world so big. And so even when the times when it feels isolating and that like I'm, out here training on my own, I'm alone, these things like that, I am immediately reminded, once I'm back with the team and traveling and experiencing so many different things, that like my world is actually so big. And that is like, that has always been worth it and is bigger than the isolation that you feel sometimes when you're living like feels like a really different, like living on a different parallel to people. Like I'm living like parallel to what other people are doing. But when you're with your team, like you all know what it's like. There's the understanding. You're like, I know this life, we know this life. And, then all of a sudden you have 20 some people, 30 some people, if you include staff and things like that around you that know what it's like. And they're with you and you have that. And like, that's when I'm like, oh, I could do this forever. So like right now, yeah, I've been by myself for a while and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can do this. And then you get back with your team and you're like, let's go. Where are we going next? What are we doing?
Thank you for saying
So
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good thing to highlight. But with your wealth of experience and how do I say this? You have a very unique perspective being, the captain of the national team. What will you say
Mhm.
to um younger players dreaming of representing the Philippines? Whether it's a homegrown player or someone who,
Mhm.
was born and raised overseas and wants to
Yeah.
represent the country.
Mhm. That it's not going to be easy, and that it's not a right, it's a privilege to be able to represent your country on an international level. And I think um, there's a learning curve to that. It's not the same as playing club football. It's not the same as playing for your high school. It's a whole nother ball game when you think about that you are representing a people, that you are representing so many more people. rather than just yourself or rather than just your team or just people within like the football community. And I think to think of it that way and zoom out can be really overwhelming. To be like, well, I don't even know how to grasp that. So sometimes it's easier to just like not think about it and just be like, oh, I'm just like going out there to play and like this is cool. You know, and again, it's that thing where you're like, yeah, it is super cool. It's super interesting. Like to be able to tell people that like you're part of like a national team for a country, you know, like that has again all of that shininess, all of the lights around it. And you're like, wow, that's so cool. And it is, but it also can't be taken lightly. And that it's not going to be easy to continue to do that day in and day out. And that there's a certain like there's a certain level of professionalism with that. There's a certain level of things that are required of you. You can be have to be able to be held accountable. Like we are like the face of things, essentially. And so if you're not representing yourself well, you're not representing the country well. And we need to be a kind of like a, mascot of sorts. Like it's yeah, we're there, we're putting in the work, we're the one participating in the games and things like that. But it's just realizing that it's more than that and having pride in that you can do that. Um, but just knowing that it's like it's not about you. Um, and I know a lot of people want to do it and represent their family and things like that. And that's amazing, but it's even bigger than just your family too. Because you're not just representing like the name on your back. You're representing like the flag on your chest. And like you can either take that really seriously, um, or you don't. And like there's not a lot of I think you get to choose. And it will also like you'll realize like kind of what that means is like you get older, um and can understand and gain that like awareness around yourself and around what that means on a bigger scale. um but I think it's just like always remembering that and kind of operating from that place of that it's not just about me. I'm not just representing myself. I'm not just representing my team. There's a whole lot of people behind me and that are supporting me and relying on me to just show up in the best way. And again, it's that humanity behind it is that like you're not expected to win every game. The goal isn't that you win every tournament. That's not the expectation. That's the goal. That's what you want, like obviously. But it's about how you move through those things and how you show up and how you are being as a person and not just a footballer. Because like the best way to like show how your people are and represent a people is to be like those people, is to exude those characteristics that makes your country special and unique and different, and then be that and not just like you know say those things or like you know what to say and what people want to hear and things like that. And so that's what I would you know and it's what I have like told my players and our youth, because there is an expectation behind it. You're going to make mistakes and you're not always going to get it right, but that's your humanness in you. That's everyone does that. And so that's going to be okay. And hopefully, you know, there is that forgiveness on both sides. And then you repair and you move forward. But if you have the opportunity to represent your country and you can do that, like, you know, there's no greater honor. And there's been no greater honor for me in my career. And so it's not ever something that I've taken lightly. And yeah, if you want to play for our national team, like it does come with certain expectations of not so much your skill or your talent level, but just how you represent how you represent the country and you carry yourself and the things that you put out into the world while you are wearing that flag and while you are representing. Because people are watching and people are taking note. And yes, you don't want to always care about how every single person thinks about you, but there are certain times, you know, when you are in that representation role that you do need to care because it's not, again, it's just not about you and what you think is right and what you want and what you know, how you want to act and what your goals are. It has to be about the greater collective.
Yes. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that because I think a lot of the times, you know, people don't really you know, they're always after like, you know, getting the win, but nobody really talks about how as a player for the national team, like you must show up and represent as well. Not necessarily, you know, winning the game, but it's how you represent
Mm-hmm.
the Philippines. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. And so you've talked about the emotional side of all these you know, what you're going through. I guess my last question for you would be like, I don't know, maybe is there anything you'd want to tell your younger self now that you're moving on to the next chapter of your life?
Um, yeah, I've definitely had this question like several times throughout, you know, your career. What would you tell your younger self? Um, and I think I've actually like written like one of those letters where you're like, write a letter to your younger
Yeah,
self. What would
yourself,
you tell
yes.
them? And I think one of the ones was like, always be a good teammate first, you know. Like I said, that has stayed with me. I think that just that like everything was going to be okay and it's going to work out as long as like you like know why you're playing and what's important to you and that you're always kind of reevaluating that every now and then and you come back to it. Like don't just go out there to play just to play and then, you know, you're done with it. Because I think that takes the meaning out of it. Um, something I think about it, I totally would have told myself at a younger age was to separate my identity from football sooner. Um, and I have, that's like been the biggest thing that I've tried to unpack over the last handful of years. Um, and obviously it was a lot more difficult way down the road. So I think the sooner that you can separate yourself from football as not who you are, but what you do, the easier it's going to be to transition out of it when it's not what you're doing for a living anymore, when it's not your all consuming life, or just to make sure that along the way you're doing other things. You are finding other passions. You are not tying everything about yourself to how you are as a footballer. Because if you do that and you can separate that, like it just becomes like I don't I don't believe or have come not to believe that like you have to be obsessed with football in order to be a great footballer. That you have to eat, breathe, sleep football in order to play at a high level. Maybe if you want to be like the greatest of all time, or like that's what you're going for, maybe that's the key to it. And I think that there are some people that can do that, and that is their optimum. That's their optimal. But I think more so than not, that's not true for many athletes. And I think that we're told that and have been told that for a long time is that you won't play at a high level. You won't succeed if you don't eat, breathe, and sleep football. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're thinking about. No distractions, no relationships, no of this stuff. And I've come to realize that there has to be some kind of balance. You have to have outside outlets. You have to have other things that you love and are passionate about outside of the game. And you have to know who you are outside of being a footballer. You have to know what that looks like. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really difficult when you're not doing it anymore, because you're going to feel like you don't have anyone. You're going to feel like you don't have other things that make you happy. You're not going to have other relationships outside of that. And to know that, like, I'm, not going to be around a lot of my really good friends anymore. If I didn't have anything else outside of that, I would feel like I didn't have any friends anymore, or I didn't have a system around me. If all of my eggs are in one basket, if I'm all consumed by one thing in my life, then that transition is going to be so much harder. And so I wish that I would have known that earlier. But all my messaging was no distractions. Don't cultivate your relationships. Don't, you know, you can't have other hobbies. You don't like, those are just going to keep you from getting you to where you want to be. But I think we are our best selves and we can operate from a really great place if you have a balance of all of those things in your life. And that's how you're going to get the best output of yourself and reach your highest goals that you would want to, is if you have all of those things set in place. You have different systems outside of just what your football world is and your football people and the way that you see yourself. You've got to see yourself as more than just a football. You're to how successful you are, how many championships you've won, how much money you make. Like that's your worth can't be tied to that. So to separate as quick as you can, or just sooner than later. If that is all you want, like, if that is like your thing, that you can eat, breathe, sleep, and like you feel like you are fulfilled in that way, like all of your tanks are full, your mind, your heart, you know, your body, like I support that. Okay. But I don't think that that's like optimal for everyone as much as it's told, you know? So that's what I would have definitely told my younger self.
I feel like you're speaking to me as well.
Yeah.
And not just you.
Speaking to anyone that it resonates with. Like if you're like, oh no, then yeah, it's for you.
Your message, do you have any?
Yes. Yes. The the big ones obviously are my family. Um, that has always, been supportive of me playing, and always let me, run off wherever and do whatever I needed to do to accomplish and be a part of whatever I wanted to with soccer. Like they've always been supportive um, of that, which I'm really grateful for. And, all of the relationships and friendships that I've had along the way have molded me into who I am today. And I've been a part of so many great teams, so many great staffs. I have so many coaches that I'm still in contact with, um, that are my good friends. Um, and I think that's really special as well. And, so thankful to my partner who has, you know, stayed by me while I've been jumping off to all different corners of the world for the better part of my life. And, you know, so a lot of the time we have not been in the same spot. And I know that that's difficult. So it's just been really great to have someone who understands and knows how passionate I am about what I do and pushes me to do whatever I need to do um, to accomplish, to just follow my heart wherever that leads me. Um, and especially, I want to thank all of my teammates that I've had along the way with the Philippines national team. It's looked a lot different, and people have come and go, and people have been there since day one. And it's just been such an amazing ride full of, the good, bad, and the ugly. Um, and we've just stayed so unified throughout the whole time. And it's just been, we are so bonded through all of our experience and our ups and downs and our wins and our losses. And like it's all been so meaningful to me and everyone that I've come across along the way. I'm just so thankful for, and especially um, also our support staff and our coaching staff. Um, a lot more than half the time, I'm closer in age to our support staff, so they've been my rocks through everything. Have kept me together mentally, have put me back together physically, um, and just been, you know, role models for me, figures that I look up to and are, my family. Like our national team has been my family for the last 6, 7 years. And I've grown so much, and it's been such an honor to work alongside everyone and be a part of their lives and have everyone be a part of my life. Um, we've along the way, like we've lost family, we've lost friends, and we've been there for each other through it. And I think that's really special. And we've just accomplished so much together, but also just like been dragged through the rocks so many times. And we're always there to pick each other up, which has been great and is, why I think our team is so special in that way. Um, and then I also just like want to thank everyone kind of outside of our team as well that has been there along the way, that has also been there to cheer us on and to help drag us through those rocks also and pick us up and support us and know that like we're not in it alone. The Philippine football community is small, but it's tight and it's powerful and it's been strong. And to witness the diaspora of Filipinos all around the world has been like the coolest thing, honestly. Like I did not, I mean, you just don't know until you know, right? You just don't know that like there are people everywhere and that they come out to support, to be in places where you didn't think anyone knew that we were there or would like bother to come, in India, in where have we been? We've been so many places I don't even remember anymore. They all just have run together in Jordan and New Zealand. That was insane. Like to have the support that we had at the World Cup by Filipinos, coming from the Philippines, but just that we're there in New Zealand, like to have the stadium, more than have the stadium be full of your fans, not in your home country. Like how cool. It was so, so cool to see that happen. And I know that like there were not many teams that could say that. Like it was up there with like the US
Oh yeah.
and they're the most powerful like diehards and things like that of like they're the powerhouse. So like people will follow them everywhere. They'll travel near and far to see them play, like all of those things. So like that wasn't like a surprise. That was like, oh yeah, like obviously that makes sense to me. But then to like come to our matches and see that the stadium is full of Filipinos, you're like, where did this come from? How did they even know? Like we felt so small, but like and we're such underdogs and things like that, but we felt like so supported that it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like it was our first World Cup. It didn't feel like, we had been, given some like pass to get to the World Cup and, like it wasn't like that. And it was because of the community. It was because of the fans that came out and just like loved us through the whole thing. When you're down 6-0 and the crowd is still roaring for you and they're not booing you, like it's just it was so so cool, so inspiring to to be around that, to feel that support, and like I said, the community is very small, but have always been very, very big for us. And I think like that's why it's always like a little jarring to know like how small the sport still is within the Philippines
Mm.
because it just like because the support at times just feels so big and feels like so like there's so many, but then you're like the Philippines is enormous. There's, so many millions of people and the football community is actually just like so little, but it just never felt that way. And that is like has been so helpful, more helpful than I think many people know. Um, and I hope that it continues to grow. And one of the, big reasons that that support and awareness has grown is because of people like you and Pam and all of our like media people that have followed us and have given of your time and investment in us. And for I'm sure you all have like stories of like, you don't need to be doing this. This is something you're just passionate about. We don't have a staff of media people that are getting that money, getting all of these perks and things like that. Like that's not the case, but like you guys have stayed with us and you've not just been, jumping on for when it's like convenient and when we're doing really well. It's an easy time to, get on board with teams and things like that when they're doing well and they're like, you know, all the flashy stuff is happening and you're like, yeah, I love that team. And just even like our Facebook and groups that have like popped up over the years that people run, and you guys are following us, not just like when we're with the national team, but like following everyone's careers outside of it. And you just like the news is like the coverage is there, and that is what is ultimately going to grow the fan base, that's going to grow the community, is because you guys have been putting so much of your time and support into us to continue to always have like those outlets, and that things are being like looked into and updated, and players are being followed around, like you're following careers, you're following all these things, you're putting news out there that is helpful and is like just getting more people on board and wanting to support us and wanting to be there for us. And I think another thing, like outside of like the immense gratitude that like I know that I personally feel from that, and the relationships that I've even cultivated with a lot of you, which has been really nice. And um it's and I know this is like touchy and things like that, but it's something I know that I've wanted to touch on for a while, is that as much as those the support that we have from our community of fans and things like that, like you see how impactful the positive stuff is, and the support that we have, like how meaningful that is to our team, and how impactful it is on our lives, is to also, since our community is so small and we've always had so much external noise and sometimes backlash, um, for the way our national team is made up. And I think it's important to realize that we are all Filipino enough, and that we are all representing the Philippines, and it is no fault of any of the players where they're born, where they've been raised, and that that is the thing that ultimately divides us, is when we get into those conversations of foreign foreigners, heritage players versus your local homegrown. Like that's like that's the thing that will ultimately separate us. And as much as it's been external noise, I feel like to some degree it's started to get within our team and the players. And that's what breaks my heart more than anything, is that the players don't have any control over that. There's nothing you can do based on where you grew up or where you were born or where you're living now. And the more times you're told something, after a while, you're going to start to believe it, you know? And like I said, as much as it's impactful when you're supported in a good way, it's also very impactful when the message becomes negative, and when you're told something is wrong that you don't have control over. And the big part of our national team is that has been different, that a lot of national teams work from youth up to senior level. but our pyramid has been, you know, reversed in that way, that we've needed to succeed at our senior level in order to have that waterfall
Yeah.
snowball down into the youth. And that's not how every national team works, but are pitted against each other in that way, that's how it should be. And like that's what we want, is that the grassroots, the youth, to be able to have more access to trainings, to these opportunities and things like that. And the positive support and the unity and community around us will continue to allow that to happen. But when that stops because of things that are out of players' control, that makes it more difficult for the big goal to happen, you know? And so I think my message is just to consider that and be mindful of that we have such a good and supportive and positive, impactful soccer community, that when you hear those things being pushed or said, that we have a community that nips that in the bud, that says no. We support our national team players. We don't attack our players personally or like things like that, that like we have each other's backs in that way, and that we're not, you know, perpetuating that message, that we're the ones that say no. Like we already have, like, you know, we already have that external message from other countries, from other outlets that like love to, you know, continue to keep that ball rolling and to continue to make that be a point of division.
Right.
And when the call is coming from inside the house, that's the easiest way to break down progress. That's the easiest way to break things down in a way that's not helpful, in a way that's not you're like, what is the goal of that? You know, what is the point? What are you hoping to achieve by what, like, basically like outing these players, or like saying that someone's more Filipino than the other? That's the whole point of having the Filipino diaspora all around the world, is that everyone is Filipino. And that's the message. That's what we felt when we were in all of these countries playing and having the support. It's not like they would come to our games and be like, oh, we support you because we're like you, like we're expats, or we're like, you know, we don't live in the Philippines, so that makes, like, we can see you more, you know, like there's like that connection. It's like, no, you're connected because we're all Filipino. And it doesn't make you less Filipino because you're living in Turkey, or because you're living in New Zealand, or you were born in the Philippines and then left, or have lived your whole life in the Philippines. Like, that's not the goal here, you know? And I think it's just like with time, it's just getting lost. We get lost in that. And I just don't want that to affect, one, our players on personal levels, and our team and the progress and things like that. Like, I want it to continue to grow. And our community is so strong and so impactful. And I just hope that we will continue to be a catalyst for that positive change, for the things that we do ultimately want. And like, I just wanted to be able to express that, like, the positive stuff is so impactful, but the negative stuff is very impactful as well. And if we can just like step back and realize that we're all on the same team, that we will continue to, you know, break down all of these walls that we already have continued to, and that we can like continue to grow together and want to see one another succeed and all of those things. And again, just a big thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it's been just so amazing to witness all the things that I have been able to witness and experience all the things that I've been able to experience from being part of this national team and part of this community, and that I hope to continue to be a part of. And so I'm just thankful to be here and continue to help us grow and achieve whatever way we can, and realize now that my impact will be better felt off the field and not on the field, and that's okay. So just thank you for having me again and being able to, you know, have this conversation and unpack a lot of years of
Oh yeah.
things happening, and it doesn't give it justice, but it gives it, like I said, a lot more than me taping myself for a few minutes and being weird.
Oh gosh. Uh thank you, T. Um, thanks
Thank you.
for sharing your story, your reflection. And also more importantly for showing up and representing us with so much pride. Um, it's been uh made me cry, it's been a privilege to know you, hear
Yeah.
about your journey, your insights, and witness the impact you've made on and off the field. And I think that your legacy is powerful and inspiring, and I know that this is just the beginning of a new chapter filled with just
Yeah.
as much heart and passion. So thank you.
Yeah. I hope so.